All right, Afiz, you can take it up from here. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. So in my head, I was already thinking, you know how they say there's a game recently that I saw somewhere. They tell you to pause. Tell you to pause and do not move for about a few minutes or a few seconds. And if you move, you're out of the game. But I mean, that's just on a lighter note. Please confirm when you can see my screen. I think that's the last thing I was saying before
Oh, no.
Please confirm when you can see it. I can't hear anything from
Yeah, we can see
anybody.
your screen.
You can
Okay,
see your
awesome.
screen.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do is to put it on presentation mode. Hopefully that is even clearer. All right. So once again, good morning, everybody. Please let me know when it's on presentation mode. I think I've done that, but it's not showing from my end. Okay, yeah, I think it's good now. Okay.
It's on presentation mode
Please,
now.
it's good to see your face. Thank you for being on the call. And I just learned today is your birthday. And what
Yeah.
better time to celebrate? So happy birthday
Oh,
to you.
thank you very
Okay,
much.
everyone, today is Hafi's birthday. So let's celebrate him. Thank you for also making our time to be with us on the call today. So
Thank
yes,
you
please
very
go
much.
ahead with your session.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that beautiful one too. Thank you, Edith. All right, thank you. So I'm going to be as brief as possible so that I don't take so much of our time. I also understand that there's a specific time frame this is supposed to go for, so I'll try as much as possible for me not to take too long. Also, please let me know when it seems like I'm being fast because I have the tendency to speak to speak a bit fast, especially when I'm excited and speaking about a course that I truly enjoy. So please let me know if I'm being too fast, and then you can call my attention to it, and probably spend more time speaking about a few things. So once again, the conversation for today is really about project management and how it relates to everything that we do, specifically talking about integration management under, one of the knowledge areas in project management. But before we even get to that, I'm sure that everybody on this call must have heard what project management is. They must have known what project actually is, because it will be very, very weird for us to have about 40 something people here on the call and nobody knows what project is. Nobody knows what project management is at some point. I also understand that there are people that this might be new to them. Some might probably just know the concept, but not everything in detail. But of course, we're starting somewhere today, right? And the idea is during the course of these beautiful sessions that have been put together by Transformation College, you definitely will understand what project management in itself is. And of course, experts will obviously come on the call to tell you how beautiful this particular course is. And I like the fact where, the initial trainer before now, Mr. or we'll say consultant Kingsley, the man with the most knowledge around, business analysis, who spoke earlier, I like the fact where he pointed out a few things, which is very, very key. And I feel like it's very, very important that, if you're learning about project management, that you also should know that it's not just enough to learn about project management without having the fundamentals or having some kind of knowledge around business analysis. He rightly said, and of course I stand by him when he was saying that one of our mentors, who also said that his own mentor told him that a project can succeed without a project manager, just like Chrisley has said. But a project is really bound to fail if you do not have a business analyst. Now, I'm not saying that the conversation for today is around business analysis. I'm really just saying that, for you to excel in project management, then of course you need to have some level of skills and expertise in business analysis. Because of course, there's a lot of things that you need to understand in business analysis that you need to now put in place while executing project management activities. So it is really, really important that you have some kind of background around business analysis. You learn about some of the core competencies around business analysis, but I'm sure, like I said earlier, that during the course of these beautiful 12-week sessions, you will learn a lot around business analysis and then merging that with your knowledge around project management, which we will also do. So let me not bore you with all of that, but please write it somewhere down that you can't really excel so much as a project manager without first also being a business analyst. So these are some of the course contents that we'll look through. What project management is, the characteristics of a project, what project is and what operations are, project environment, the role of a project manager, talent triangle, project integration management, which really is what we're going to talk about, all of that. Let me not bore you with all of this. Right. So let's really get into it, right? First of all, I also try as much as possible to ensure that, the class is engaging, so that it doesn't feel like I'm the only one doing the talking alone, So, but let's start somewhere. What really do you think a project is? Let's even start from what a project is. What do you think a project is? I would so much appreciate if I get feedbacks in the chat rooms, so that this is really, really going to be engaging. We don't also want people to speak and unmute their mic and speak, so that the whole thing doesn't get too, you get where I'm going, right? So please, in the chat room, I would so much appreciate that feedback. What really do you think a project really is, right? What is a project? What do you think a project is? Is a project something that people just say they are doing? It's a project, an activity. What really do you think a project is? I would so much appreciate that feedback. Please, you could put that in the chat room, please. What do you think a project is? Before we then even talk about what exactly is project management, right? So what do you think a project is? I do not know. Okay, where's this chat room now? So I would appreciate your feedback, in the chat room. So what do you think a project is? What do you think a task is, right? Is there a difference between project and a task? Yeah. So what do you think a project is? What do you think a task is? What do you think is an operation? Right. What do you think a project is? What is a task? What is an operation? Yeah, things like that. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Chat room. Thank you. I'm already seeing feedbacks. Thank you, Benefit. Thank you, Mr. the Almighty, Mr. Adebayo. Okay, let's see. La 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 la. Okay, project is a specific goal to create result. Beautiful benefit. A project is an engagement that has a start. Absolutely, sir. Ganiyo, a project is a temporary endeavor that has a beginning and an end. Absolutely, I totally agree with you. I see more. A project is a layman's language. In a layman's language, it's an assignment to be carried out. Beautiful. So somebody is logged in as Dell. I do not want to assume that Dell is your name. Dell might probably be the name of the computer. But okay, that's on a lighter note. A project is a temporal. It's a temporary goal-oriented effort undertaken to create a unique. Absolutely. So you're all right? You're all correct. Really, a project is really an activity that has a start date and an end date. It will be very, very weird for you to say you've undertaken a project and it doesn't have a start date and it doesn't have an end date. What will you call that? That one will just be, you're just working and it doesn't have a date and, till the kingdom come. But a proper project it's an activity really, that has a beginning, right, and an end. Usually it also has a time frame, right? It could be 1 week, it could be 1 month, it could be 1 year, depending on what that activity really is, so that's really what a project is. So well, I was saying something about tax earlier too, right? Tax is also an activity if you look at it, right? But a tax are activities that form a project. In a project, you have so many tasks, you have so many activities that needs to be completed, and once all of those things are done, you say, oh, you fully implemented or carried out a project. So those tasks are usually activities or series of activities that are done, within a particular project. But then what really is project management? Yeah, if you look at it, management also is an ability to be able to manage, what's it called now? To manage a lot of things, to ensure that you get results at the end of the day, right? Planning and coordinating so many things, to ensure that there's an end goal that is met at the end of the day. So if you look at project management, really, it's really about getting things done, right? It's really about, how to start something and get it done within a particular time frame. It will be very, very weird for you to also assume, like I said, it's very, very weird to say you're doing a project management and you're called to come do something for somebody or manage a particular project, and you are not clearly saying this is when this is starting, this is when this is ending. I mean, everybody will just be looking at you like, who's this man? Where did they bring this man from? Things like that. So really, really, that's what project management is really about. And of course, there's the project management body of knowledge that has actually defined this as well, to say that, project management is really the application of knowledge, skill, and tools and techniques, to project activities. You need to put a lot of things in place to ensure that the project objective at the end of the day is achieved. It is going to be weird that you start a project and the objective that is really meant to be achieved is not met. Then what is that? Because so many things are bound to go wrong if you don't properly use some of the skills, tools, and techniques required to see that those projects is finally fulfilled or gets gets to the final day, the final objective. So if you look at the purpose of project management, really too, is to really see how it meets the requirement and also provides value at the end of the day. When you're project managing, right, the end result really is to see that there's a lot of things that have been put into place, and then the value is later gotten at the end of the day. For instance, now, you probably want to oversee a construction, of maybe a bridge or something. You probably have highlighted that this is the duration of time that this will take. You've probably highlighted that this is the cost and the time and the resources and everything that will take, and then, of course, once that thing is completed, you really will see the bridge everywhere. It's visible, and everybody can attest to say that, oh, of course, something was done and it was properly managed. And of course, we are at the finish line where we can see the end product as it is. So there are so many things that you can project manage. It could be product, it could be service, it could really be anything, right? So there's really no, it's going to be very, very weird to assume that the only thing you can project manage is maybe a product that you want to see it go through the project management life cycle, and then at the end of the day you have a tangible thing. So it could be tangible, it could be intangible, it could really be anything that needs to actually be transformed into an end goal. So of course there are characteristics of a project too. It is really, really temporal, which means that it has a beginning, and of course it has an end. It also has a unique output, which could be product, it could be service, it could be result, things like that. And of course the whole essence is that you have a lot of collaboration with the different people, and then ensure that all of the resources that you've put into place gets to the finish line, or gets to the end product at the end of the day. But one thing is very, very important that I think is also very, very important for us to know. I was asking earlier the difference between the project and a task, right? But now think about it. What is the difference between a project and a project? Of course, I'm already showing it on my screen, so I would. All right. So what's the difference between a project and a program? What would you say is the difference between a project and a program, right? So let me go to the chat room, so just in case people are dropping messages. What will you say the difference is between a project and a program? Project, we've highlighted, and we've all agreed that it's a series of activities that happen, that has a time frame with a start date and an end date. What then will you call a program? Is a program also a project? Is a program different from a project? Is a project part of a program? So I would like to hear feedbacks from you. What do you think it's a program? What's the difference between a program and a project? Is there any difference? Are there similarities between both? Is one a subset of the other? Is one a bigger umbrella for the other? So I really like to get feedback from you. And of course, like I said, projects are really temporary, and of course they are unique. Operations really are things that are very, very ongoing, and they're repetitive, which means that you do those things over and over and over again. So it means that if you do that today, you do it same thing tomorrow, you do it next tomorrow. That's really what operations is really like. And projects are really often, they really lead to change, and in operations, because at the end of the day, when you're done projecting or project managing whatever you're doing, it's to create change, and those change would affect some of the operations at the end of the day. So, but I'd like to hear your feedback. What's really the difference? What would you call the difference between a project and a program? So I see in the chat room somebody say, Ganiyu, thank you. A program is a combination of many projects. Thank you very much for that. Benefit: project is a part of a program because program encompasses a lot of, my messages have covered what I was reading. So let me go back to it. Yeah. So project is a part of a program because program encompasses a lot of projects. Absolutely. Programs are part of what drives a project. All right, let's go. A project is a temporary endeavor with specific, well-defined objective, aim to producing a unique. Interesting. This is detailed. Thank you very much for that. What's the name again? Ijoma. Okay. Festus program are activities done to achieve a project. So I think we're missing it. So a project is there are a series of activities, right, to be done within a stipulated period of time. Programs are projects are subsets of programs. Multiple projects makes a program. Does that make sense? Series of projects makes a program because projects have a time frame. Programs also have time frames, but they are more longer than projects. Does that make sense? Projects forms programs because they are a series of projects that makes a program. Projects also have timeline, just like programs also have timelines, but the timeline of projects are not compared to that of a program because programs are longer than projects take. So if I should ask you now, from the definitions we've had the definitions, not definitions now, but we've explained to ourselves what tasks are, what projects are, what programs are, and probably operations. What will you say if you are to arrange three things? Task, projects, programs. Which comes first? Which is a bigger bucket than the other, and which is the bigger umbrella? Am I making sense? Task, project, programs. If you are to arrange them with the one that is completed shortest before the one that takes longer, if I would say that, if that makes sense to you, task, project, programs. Does program come first? Does project comes first? Does task come last? Yeah, so task, project, programs. Which comes first? Which comes second? Which comes last? And why do you think so, right? Because do I need to start answering myself now? So let me go to the chat room. Okay, so we have a lot of where do I start from? Okay, so the chat room is something. Okay. Tax project programs. Thank you. Tax. Yeah. Thank you very much, Nassim. Blessing project program tax. So there's somebody called Zoom user. I don't think that's your name. I think that's probably the name that you didn't probably change to your name. So maybe you probably look into that. Samuel Destiny, thank you very much. Oyinloye, I don't know if I'm murdering your name, but thank you. Benefit, you say tax alone, but tax project program. So I think generally, right, tax is the smallest, which obviously, it's an activity that needs to be completed within a particular period, right? And of course, it's the shortest, within a day. You can have a tax that can be completed within a day. Notwithstanding, you can also have a tax that can actually take 2 days, can take 1 week, right? But the idea is that, tax can be completed within a short period of time than a project. A project also can take 1 day to be completed. Do you know that? Do you know that people who also do these graphic designs things they also call their activities or their jobs a project? So somebody can call somebody to say, hey, I want you to do a graphic design for me. This is what I want to do. This is blah, blah, blah. And it probably takes that person 1 day to complete. Will you call that a task or will you call it a project? But of course, that's a project, but tax can now be some of the things that the guy or the person will do before he completes the project. Now, the projects are now activities that someone or a company or a project manager will do in order to complete a program. Does that make sense now? So that's really how we should look at it. Thank you very much for all your comments. Thanks a lot, Charity. Thanks a lot, Mr. Adebayo. Thanks, Benefit. Thank you very much for that. So let's just quickly go ahead so I don't take so much of our time. So let me close the chat room. Give me a second, please. Let me move this thing that is blocking my view. Okay. Excuse me. Now, one of the important things that we need to also know is that projects really can also be affected, right? Project can really be affected by environment. The environment can really also be internal environment, can also be external environment. There are some of the environments that really aligns or that are really peculiar to a project. There are some that, or let me rephrase that. There are internal and external environments that are under, that can be, well, how would I put it now? That can be managed by the project team or whatnot. There are things that, you know, can affect the project internally and externally. There are other activities or what's it called now, environment or things that can affect a project. But of course, those things are under the purview of the project team. Now, don't get me wrong. There are things that can affect a project internally and externally, right, that are not under the purview of the project team, which means that, you know, there's really nothing those project teams or the project manager can really do about it. Internal factors or external factors can really be things around, you know, what's it called now? Maybe culture, which is more internal, you know. It could really be maybe the organizational structure. It could be anything, you know, but these are not things that the project manager can do anything about. Does that make sense? Because you really cannot do anything about an organization structure, can you? You can't do anything about an organization's culture, can you? You can't do anything about some of the resource availability that an organization have, can you? No, you know, but there are also things that are external factors that can also affect projects, you know, that also are not under what a project manager or what a project team can do about it. Like, for instance, political factors, government regulations, you know, it could be market conditions, it could really be anything. It could even be, you know, what we call like legal issues that is happening within that particular period, you know. So it could really be anything, but those things are really not things that, you know, the project manager can really have anything or make any input or make any what's it called now, make any adjustments to. The only thing he can do is to see how to work around some of these things. But there are also things called the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. These are more things that are defined by the project management body of knowledge. Now, the enterprise environmental factors are very, very similar to what you would call the, you know, the normal internal and external environment. These are things that usually are out of reach of the project manager. You really cannot do anything about those things. The only thing you can do is to find a way around it, you know, to try to ensure that, you know, you put a lot of things in place so that, you know, you can find your way around it, but you really cannot do anything about those things. But the organization process asset are now things that, you know, you can kind of find a way to influence. So for instance, these are things around maybe some of the lessons you've learned from previous projects. Now, if you're a project manager, of course, I expect that, or everybody expect that you probably should have some kind of background around what you're trying to project manage, what you are also trying to reach a final end goal, you know. So it's expected that you also have lessons that you've learned in the past that you also will help you gear or steer what you're doing to the final destination. It also means that under this organization process asset, we also have things around, you know, the processes and procedures within an organization. That are things that you can also try to kind of, you know, influence, you know. There are also things around templates and forms that, you know, you can try to find a way to adjust and then influence that the organization adopt some of those things, and then that way it also helps what you're trying to do. Now, these enterprise environmental factors and organizational process asset, these are more defined, you know, by the what's it called now, the PMBOK. You know, generally, so many things can really affect projects. It could be internal, it could be external, it could really be anything. And then, of course, if you're not able to manage some of those things, it becomes a problem. It really becomes a problem. Let me give you an instance of somebody. I think I was reading somewhere where they were trying to, I don't know if it's in Lagos now, they were trying to install, or they were trying to make a smart market. Do you understand what smart market means? Smart market means that in an instance where, you know, the market, they install things around CCTV, you know, they install things around some of these technology gadgets, within the market space that, helps monitor a lot of things that is happening within the market. Somebody will probably be in the background or be in a room where he's overseeing all of those things that are happening, Now, take for instance now, or from what I was reading, right? It was gathered that the project manager did not really put in factor some of the things that could affect that project. Now, for instance, they just started installing some of those things, some of those cameras, some of those things. And of course, when people in the market start seeing you just coming to install things and everybody's wondering, where is this coming from? There was no proper, will I say, sensitization to the market people about what is about to happen. There was no proper communication to the leads in the market, because usually they will have this, they call them yaloja, or people who actually lead those markets. So nobody said anything to anybody. But the local government have actually, paid for this project to happen. And then all of a sudden there was a fracas. Everybody was trying to fight against what was happening. Not because it's not a good thing that is happening, but because, these are some of the issues that probably project manager did not put into consideration. So for instance, ideally, if you're supposed to do some of these things, then of course you need to call somebody who is the lead in the market to say, okay, this is what we've been tasked to do. This is a project that we're trying to do. It is also important that we also gather people in the market to sensitize them about what we are trying to do, what is the benefit of what we're trying to do, to see how crime can also be reduced, to see how things can, work in their favor. But before then, everybody was already thinking that, those CCTV cameras were there to monitor and prognose what those market women were doing, and they were very, very uncomfortable about things like that. So my point is, it is important that you understand some of the things that can affect your project in a way, and then of course understanding which are within your control, which are not within your control. And if you're already seeing that some of those things are, getting a different direction, then of course you need to find a way to mitigate those things and ensure that it doesn't crash down. Because at the end of the day, if probably the project manager in this scenario did not do anything to call the leaders again to say, okay, this is what we're trying to do, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and this is why we need your support in this regard, then if he had not done that, then of course he will realize that after installing the CCTV cameras the following day, he probably wouldn't even see anything mounted in the market again. Probably people have taken them to their houses, and things like that. But of course, that's just a scenario for us to properly understand that, there are a lot of things that can affect the environment. And of course, if we're not conscious of some of those things that, we can influence, and the ones that we cannot, and the ones we cannot, knowing the proper channel to address some of those things. So what's the role of a project manager? Of course, one of the most important role of that project manager is to be able to understand that he needs to lead a team, the team to achieve the goals. Now, the goals are clearly set things that you want to achieve. And of course, before even creating that, you probably would also have what we'll call like a project charter, where you now have everything regarding that project in that document. That will also clearly state out what exactly you want to achieve, how you want to achieve them, the roles and responsibilities of the project team, and all of those things. But it is important that everybody is on the same page from your team, because it will be very, very weird that you're going north, and another person is going south in your team. That would be very, very weird, So it's very, very important that everybody is carried along, and of course, everybody understand what is needed to be done. Now, there's also the fact where that, a project manager needs to find a way to balance scope, time, and cost, and even quality. In fact, there's also something in project management called the project, what they call that now? They call the project constant, or is it constant or constraint? They call it triple constraint, right? Triple constraints now means the scope, time, and cost, because these are the core things around the project. Everybody's concerned about the scope, everybody's concerned about the time, everybody's concerned about the cost, and of course the quality. So if you're not project managing properly, then if you get it wrong in any of these areas, trust me, you're getting it wrong in the entire thing. So if a scope is not properly defined, for you to say this is what we're trying to achieve, this is what we want to do, then you have problems, because imagine the scope is not properly defined and then you have a time frame to implement or execute a scope that is not properly defined. How does that make sense? You have 2 weeks to execute a scope that is not properly defined. Do you think we'll get to the end goal that is the first thing on my screen here? It will never happen. Imagine also that you have a clearly defined scope, you have a clearly defined time, but you don't have a proper cost. How do you want to achieve your goal? It's never going to happen, or even the quality, because at the end of the day, once you say you're done and you've done a closeout, you'll be assessed. And when you're assessed, they will say, you've done nothing. You've done absolutely nothing, because at the end of the day, the scope, time, and cost does not even, doesn't align with the quality of the delivery that you've provided. So it is very, very important that as a project manager, you need to also find a way to balance scope, time, cost, and quality, because at the end of the day, if you lack in any of these areas, if you do it poorly, then of course it will greatly affect the project. And of course, you see this point is one of the areas that we'll be speaking more on integration management under project management. Of course, it basically talks about all the knowledge areas in project management, which scope, time, cost, and quality are part of, but of course, we will definitely get to that point and digest that properly. Now, as a project manager, also, it is very, very important that you also have leadership skills, communication skills, and negotiation skills. And that was why when I started, I said it would be very, very wrong, very, very weird for you to be a project manager and not have business analysis skills. Because at the end of the day, how well do you want to be able to, lead, communicate, and as well execute what is required at the end of the day? Now, as a project manager, it is expected that you have business analysis skills. Now, in the business analysis core competence, there are certain things around, analytical thinking, which are some of the things that Kingsley was mentioning. There are also things around, communication that needs to also be done properly. There are also things around tools and techniques that you need to truly understand, because it will be very, very weird, once again, that you're a project manager and you don't know how to use tools. You don't know how to use, even if it's the least Excel, it will be very, very weird that you don't even know how to use some of those things. So tools and techniques, communication, having proper knowledge around the business itself, also having proper analytical skills, things like that. Also knowing how well, to interact and also negotiate with people. So it is very, very important that, as a project manager, you should be able to have these skills, because at the end of the day, these are what will help you navigate the complexities of some projects. So like, for instance, the scenario I was giving, I was mentioning earlier, the one in the market and all of that. If the project manager has no communication skills, have no, negotiation skills with even the market women and some of those people, it's really going to be catastrophic. Anyway, so that's some of the roles that we as project managers should actually have, and some of the skills that we actually should have. Now, there's also something called the PMI Talent Triangle, where we have things around technical project management, which is really, really around something about ways of how you work. As a project manager, it is very, very important that you also know which of the methodologies you're trying to adopt in a particular project. Now, in project management, there are different methodologies, right? There's Agile, there's Scrum, there's Waterfall, there's Hybrid, and things like that. Now, usually, some people will say they prefer to go using the Waterfall approach. Usually, what the Waterfall approach will mean that, you want to execute a particular project step by step, right? Meaning that you obviously will start from the initiation stage, start with what's it called now, implementing or planning the whole thing, and then of course executing, things like that. Typically, a step-by-step process. Which means, so for instance, the people who do construction, it is wise that everybody who wants to do construction will ensure that at least they have the right land that they want to do that construction on. So it's first, you need to clear that land, which is pretty much a straightforward thing. clear the land, ensure the land is properly cleared, and then you start to put things on it, or probably dig. Don't mind me, I'm not so much in construction. So probably dig the ground and then put some of the pillars and some things you need to put in place. So it's a very, very straight down approach. Agile it's a different approach. It just means that you're doing some of those things simultaneously. One doesn't have to be completed before you do the other. In waterfall, you must complete one before you do the other, obviously, because if you have not cleared the ground, how do you want to dig? Does that make sense? If you've not dug, how do you want to put pillars? Things like that. But there are certain projects also that, they some activities or tasks do not need to be completed before others begin. So I don't want to bore you with all of that, but there are different methodologies in project management. So there's the agile, like I said, there's the waterfall. There are even hybrids where you can also merge some of these methodologies. Now, it is also very, very important that you also understand and know how to use some of these tools in project management. Now, if you're also an excellent business analyst, of course, you will already have known how to use some of these tools. I remember I heard when Kingsley was mentioning things around, what do you call that tool now again? Xmind, Bizagi, things like that. So it's very, very important that you also know how to use tools that will also help you deliver effectively. So aside that, you also need to know how to, you need to have a proper business acumen as a project manager or as a business analyst, because at the end of the day, you need to understand that whoever has contracted you to do a particular job, has the end goal that they're expecting. It would be very, very weird for you not to be thinking in that direction, especially because there's an end goal for what the project, what you've been contracted for. And then of course, if you are not putting yourself in those people's shoes to understand what the end goal is, why they are trying to do that, and then if there is a return on investment that the project owner is looking to have, then of course you need to also think in that direction, so that once you fully executed or close the project, it should actually give them what they have actually required that they want to do. So it's very, very important that you also have that what's it called now, that knowledge, properly understanding how some of those businesses operate and why they are trying to do what they're doing. Now, of course, we cannot overemphasize the importance of leadership, in terms of project management. We really cannot overemphasize the importance of leadership, because it will be very, very weird. Like, you as a project manager, you're somebody who's very, very temperamental. You're very, very temperamental. And of course, any slight, what's the word that I'll use now? Any slight feedback you get, you're very uncomfortable. Any slight I'm looking for a better word to use. Any slight feedback or any slight rejection you get from something that you've done, probably shared with the owners, and then of course they tell you that, oh, no, this needs to be done in a different manner, and you're already getting heated up. You're already getting moody. You're already getting like feeling like somebody who wants to explode. It will be very, very weird, because if you as the leader, you are acting in that manner, what then will your teammates do? I really wonder what they will do. So it's very, very important that you also have emotional intelligence, understanding how you excuse me, understanding yourself too properly, knowing how well to communicate, and also communicate in clear terms. Because this communication thing also is not about opening your mouth. It's really not about just opening your mouth. It's really about saying the right things at the right time. Also knowing how well to say those things so that there is no misinterpretation. Also not also saying those things in ambiguous manner. Because you're trying to communicate something and you're using big words, and then the owner is like, okay, you're saying you want to do something and somebody's blowing grammar, saying things that are preposterous, or saying some things that are very, very, ambiguous, and then the person is like, okay. Okay. So it's very, very important that, we find a way to really, really communicate properly, so that at the end of the day, everybody understands each other. Nobody is saying, you said this now, but you said this. But you remember you said this, so really, really, yeah. So we really cannot overflog the importance of leadership in project management and how it applies. Now, let's come to the main discussion of the day, because at the end of the day, right, in project management, there are knowledge areas. right? There's the scope, there's the time management, there's the cost. Remember when I was saying things around the triple constraint, and then we were mentioning how scope is important, time is important, cost is important, quality is important, human resource is also very, very important, communications is important, risk too. So all of these 10 things that I mentioned here are core project management knowledge areas, meaning that these are all things that you need to also understand and know in project management, because your knowledge in these areas will also help you in executing and in going through the entire process life cycle of project management. If you do not understand these things, then you obviously will have problems. And now the most important part that we're also going to be looking at is the integration management part of things. All of these are important, right? From 1 to 9, they are all very, very important. But at the end of the day, number 10 is even more important, because you need number 10 to be able to integrate all of these areas. Once again, if you are very, very poor in scope management, it will affect the entire process. And that's what integration management is about, ensuring how to balance all of these areas so that the entire project does not suffer. If you say you want to complete the, if you say you want to complete the completion of a road in 1 week, right? You need to be sure that that can be completed in 1 week. If you're very, very wrong with your timing, no matter how brilliant your scope is, no matter how brilliant your cost is, it will affect the entire thing. If you're very, very wrong in what's it called now, human resource, if you don't have the right skilled people, you will have problem. Because at the end of the day, if you have the wrong people working with you, then of course you have problems, because how do you want to get to the end goal? You can't be the only skilled person executing a particular project, and then where support is required from others, it will be a lot for you to do. So there's a lot around procurement management also that is very, very important under the project management knowledge areas. Stakeholder management also, understanding the needs and expectation of those stakeholders and how well to ensure that your entire process meets the required objective at the end of the day. But of course, I'm not going to talk about all 1 to 9. I'm going to only focus on number 10, because like I said, number 10 is really the glue that puts all of these things together. Now, let's talk about the project management, project integration management again. Now, like I said, it's really about the glue of all the project management knowledge areas, ensuring that you understand how well to execute projects in all of those areas, and then of course being able to balance all of that for you to reach the end goal at the end of the day. I remember one time when we were having issues with a particular project that we're having, and then of course we had everything outlined, cost, time, and everything. And then, of course, we now had issues around scope. Now, not that the scope was not clear. Scope was clear. Scope was really, really clear. But at the end of the day, we had issues where we now had changes in the scope during the project. Now, it doesn't mean that changes during this project is not, you can't do that. But you need to also mind the way you do some of those changes, because when you do scope, I think they call it scope creeping. English. They call it scope creeping, right? If you do and have a lot of changes in your scope, then it will definitely affect timeline, don't you think? If you say I want to execute this particular piece of work between this particular period and this period, and you're always accommodating scope creep, meaning there's always one change or the other, or they'll say, oh, just add this one thing to it. And of course, it's just a minor thing that you add to the project and we're done. It would not change anything. It will not change anything. And then you also, as a project manager, that you want to just satisfy them, you now say, okay, let me add it to the project. Oh, I pity you and the project, because at the end of the day, you realize that you're spending longer period of time in that project than required. You also realize that the cost of the project also does not match the effort and what's it called now? The manpower, man hour, and all of that has been spent on that particular project. So once again, it is really, really important that as project management managers, we really understand how project integration really works, and then finding way to balance all of that. So again, it ensures that project components are properly coordinated, just like I said. Project integration management includes making choices about resource allocation, balancing competing demands, examining any alternative approach that would happen, so that you don't have a serious, anything serious that will affect your project at the end of the day. Tailoring the processes to meet the project objectives, and also ensuring that, you manage the interdependencies among project management knowledge areas. Now, once again, this is really, really important, because if you really do not understand or find a way to balance all of these things, it really, really would affect your project. Now, let's talk about the integration management processes. Now, there is what we call the project charter. There's what we call the project management plan in itself. There is also what we call, how you direct and manage project work. There's the management of project knowledge in itself, monitoring and controlling project work. These are really what the project management process is about. Integration management process is about. It's really about these 7 core things, and we'll take them one after the other. I'm hoping that I have not taken so much time. Mercy, please let me know if it's about 5 minutes before I end, so that I don't take so much time. All right, so like I said, these are the project integration management process. We'll take them one after the other. Now, the project charter, I mentioned that earlier, and for me, I will call it like a birth certificate of a project. The reason why I'm saying that is because a charter really would define everything about that particular project, right? Everything about the project. So, for instance, when the project should start, what you should do during that project, what are the project teams involved, what is the time and duration. Okay, thank you. What is the time and duration for that particular project? What are the tools and techniques that you would use during that particular project? So for any project manager that is brought onto a particular project, one of the most important things that you need to do is to first ask, where is the project charter? Right, because you need to find out, what is the project about? What is the end goal? Where are we driving at? To be very, very weird to just jump into a project and then you are saying, okay, let's proceed. Let's proceed where? So you need to have that proper document, and then, of course, understand where it's going. In fact, in reality, you as a project manager, you should have that even developed even before starting the project in itself, understanding how all of this will work. Because the charter, at the end of the day, anybody can just pick that up, and then, of course, understanding where you are on the project, where you're going, what level you are in a particular project. It clearly defines those things, So under the project integration management, it is really, really important that you have this project charter clearly defined, and of course, ensure that you do not do project scope creep. Ensure that you don't do a lot of changes on that. And of course, if there are changes that will even be required, ensure that it's also channeled to the appropriate persons, and then, of course, properly signed off, and then you're sure that it is not in any way affecting your project. Because if you realize that a change will affect that project, then it is important that everybody should also be aware that this change that we're trying to do is going to affect the time frame of this particular project. We need to understand, everybody needs to sign it, so that at the end of the day, they don't call you and say, Mr. Man, this project is taking too long. What is happening? We paid you and you are doing this. It is not proper. I know that's what people will say. It is not proper. I'm paying you for this and I'm not seeing value. You know how people say things like that. So as a project manager, you really want to avoid things like that. Now, aside that, you also need to develop a proper project management plan. You need to properly define what the plan would be. What are the, what's it called now? What are the the activities that will need to be carried out within that particular period. What are the clear milestones that needs to be completed, things like that. Now, aside that, you also need to find a way to also direct and manage the project work itself, meaning that, you need to follow each of those work in a very, very good fashion, so that you don't also have lapses in any area. Because if you do not direct and manage those projects properly, then you have problems. Nobody ever wants a situation where your lack of overseeing a particular project now cause a problem for you at the end of the day. You really wouldn't want that, isn't it? So you need to properly find a way to direct and manage those projects properly, ensuring that all the right deliverables are met as at when due, ensuring that all the what's it called now, changes and whatever is required are properly channeled towards the right persons, and then of course properly signed off. You need to also ensure that all project documents and everything that is required are properly documented appropriately, and of course sent to the right persons. Because one of the things that also, from experience, that I've also noticed is if you're asked to project manage something, and then of course you've had documentations, it is also important that those documentations are also passed through to the owners of that particular, or the sponsors of that particular project. Because what's the point of you documenting some things and you're keeping it to yourself? Because it will then show that you're not showing how you're doing. In fact, some people will say show workings. Show workings, so show what you've done, put it to the right person, and of course ensure that some of those things are also signed off properly. Because at the end of the day, you have a closeout report now, right? We also need to have a sign-off document to say, okay, all of these deliverables have been met, they are green, and things like that. We also need to find a way to manage, project knowledge. And this is where initially, when I was saying earlier that you need to find a way to merge your experience. You also merge your lessons learned from different projects that you've done. And also, sometimes it is not also enough that you're bringing some of your external knowledge. Please remember that you can also be a project manager within an organization that is executing the project. It doesn't necessarily have to be an external person. Please understand that too. So also understand that it's also not just about your experience from other projects. Also, some of the history of that organization can also help you, because if you realize that in the history of the organization, they've been having this particular challenge and you are not aware of that, and then you're just blindly walking into that project, and then all of a sudden everything is happening all over again, and then you are surprised that it's happening. So it is possible that there is a problem that the root cause has not been addressed. So it is very, very important that you kind of have an history of how they operate, what they do, and how it will also affect the project end goal at the end of the day. So very, very important. You need to also have that in mind. Now, also, you need to also monitor and control the project work, because once again, it is not just about just executing. You need to also ensure that what you're executing, you're also monitoring, because at the end of the day, there might be changes that is required. Change is not bad, obviously, it's just that you need to find a way to manage it so that it doesn't drastically affect your own work at the end of the day. So we need to monitor and control all of that project work. I'm being very, very mindful of time. You need to monitor and control all of that, ensuring that, all the activities that are being done are properly done. All the deliverables that are meant to be achieved are actually achieved. In the instance where there is change, you need to also put that into place. And of course, going back to the drawing board and making adjustments where required. Now, there are also instances where you also need to put in perform integrated change control. Now, this is an instance where there's a request that might be made, for you to make certain changes. And of course, you need to ensure that that is done within that stipulated time frame. In the instance where it will drastically affect that time frame, you will obviously point that out, so that changes can also be made on the time frame, so that at the end of the day, it wouldn't be a situation of where told to do this and you did this, especially in this particular period of time. A project can last almost a year, because of some certain changes that have been done that was not also envisaged, that it will also drastically affect that project. You don't really want that. Now, you need to also be very, very mindful of that. At the end of the day, you will also close that project. Now, a project can be closed, or the phase of that particular project can be closed. At the end of the day, this entire process needs to happen in every project or in every activity that you're doing. Everything needs to be properly defined. Everything needs to properly follow a particular channel, a particular process. And then, of course, you need to properly monitor those things. And in the instance where there's a change that is required, properly implement those changes, ensure that it doesn't affect the end goal, and then of course you can close that project once everything is in proper shape. Now, sorry, this is closed, affecting my screen. Give me a second, please. All right, so let's talk about the key concept of project management, project integration management. Really, if you look at it, right, every other areas of project management, every other knowledge area will require that. I mean, people have specific skills in some of these areas, especially maybe things around costing. You know, you need to have a proper accountant that really understand that. Maybe around scoping too, you need to have somebody who really understand that piece of work. Maybe around what's it called now, scheduling, you know, risk management. You need to really have somebody who have expertise in that area. But you know, as a okay, as a project manager and during the integration management part of things, you really need to be what's it called now? You really need to have insight in all of these areas. You know, it doesn't really require you to have a specific skill in integration management. You really know. You just have to find a way to be able to balance all of those things and ensure that it doesn't really affect the end goal at the end of the day. Now, aside you having the skills in of managing this entire process, you need to also find a way to holistically coordinate everything, ensure that you know stakeholder what's it called now, alignment is properly done, ensuring that the end goal is really met, ensuring that you know everything really works and you know you are not something is not falling apart. You know, so even if other knowledge areas requires a specific skill in the execution of those things, in this particular integration management, it's also skillful for you to also have a bit of knowledge of all of those things, but ensuring that you properly have the glue that puts all of this in place. I see that I'm taking a bit time, but of course I'll be rounding up in a bit. Now, it's also important that we also understand what the project management process is about, which also means, you know, properly initiating projects, ensuring that planning happens, executing those projects, monitoring and controlling, and then closing, which is very similar to what we discussed. Now, what people always have or assume wrongly is that project management is really about executing. Nah, it's really not about executing. It's the entire process. You know, you know, because why will you be executing something that was not properly planned? How does that make sense? You know, so it's really about planning properly and then executing properly. Because if you have an excellent plan and then you're not executing properly, then what are you doing? You're doing absolutely nonsense, you know. And then of course, you know, it's also not just about that, but also ensuring that you know you're monitoring and you're controlling whatever changes that might happen, and then of course going back to your plan and then making those proper changes and execute in the right manner. And of course, all project needs to be closed. So very similarly, it is very important that you know all the deliverable due dates of maybe project or service or whatever you're working on, you know, it's properly aligned, and then of course you're working towards that direction. It is also very important that you know planning is very essential. You know, it will be very weird, you know, that you know you don't have a very good plan and then you're trying to execute. Nobody really would see what you're trying to do. At the end of the day, planning is very important, as much as execution too is very important. In fact, I think there's a book that Dr. Orlando always talks about. I can't remember that book now, you know, that says that you know execution is really very important. You might have a very brilliant plan, but you know if you don't execute properly, then everything you're doing is wrong. But that's not also to say that you don't need to you must also have a very good plan to ensure that what you're trying to meet is achieved at the end of the day. So it is also very important, you know, that you know, while executing project or as a project manager, you need to also ensure that what's called you properly collate all required data. And that was why I was also saying that you need to also have an excellent business analysis skill, because if you really don't understand how to gather requirements properly, you don't know how to document those requirements that you've gathered properly, you don't know how to ask the right questions, you don't know how to ask what are the things that they're currently using, or what the problem is and how to address that problem, I mean, it's really going to be a problem for you, you know. So, and that's why we're saying a project will definitely can scale through without a project manager, but definitely bound to scale without a business analysis skill. Now, what's it called now? There are trends, you know, in project integration management that we also need to be very familiar with. The use of automated tools. Kingsley has really rightly mentioned that, you know, things around what's it called now? Bizagi, things around Trello, things like that. Very, very important. Now, you also need to understand how to use visual management tools, which are things like Kanban, dashboards that are really, really important that will help you project these things properly. It's also important that you as a project manager to also understand all the methodologies in project management, agile, waterfall, even the hybrid methodologies, understanding how best to be able to use what will work at a particular period of time. So as I conclude, we really cannot really overflog the importance of understanding what the life cycle really is about, initiating, planning, executing, and all of that. Really, really very, very important that all the areas or the knowledge areas pass through this life cycle, and then of course ensuring that there's a proper balance in that area. And once again, lessons learned is important, governance is important, change is also important, and then ensuring that you appropriately do that. Now, knowledge management, your skills from what you've learned and experiences is very, very important. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I hope I've not bored you so much. I just realized that time has been fast spent, and of course, we just have a few minutes to wrap up. So once again, thank you very much for your time. I'll be happy to take questions if you have, and then provide clarity in any area where required. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. I like to have questions and then, of course, bring this to draw the curtain on this, and then, of course, have the next trainer on the call. Thank you very much. Questions, I will appreciate that, and then, of course, provide clarity.
Thank you so much, Hafiz. You were so time conscious. Thank you so much. So we have a question here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay, so the question is from Sheye. He says, what is the difference between project management and product management?
Okay. Should I take all, or do I just take it one after the other?
Please just go ahead as you wish.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Shay. So project management is more a bigger umbrella. It's very, very related, right? You see people who have what's it called now? Have a job description of product manager or project manager. You see some also call it project manager. Now, project. Now, the product really is a particular what's it called now? Solution, or maybe a tangible thing that you're trying to achieve at the end of the day. Very, very similar. Usually, some of them even take the same approach to us, So there's really not much difference. One is really more about a specific what's it called now? Maybe a more specific maybe tangible or intangible service that is needed to be done. But while project management is really a more bigger umbrella in that regard. You see organizations have specific, they have product manager who really manages some of maybe the application that was built within that organization. You see that a lot in fintech companies. They say, I have a product manager who manages the application that we have, so he sees the end-to-end of that entire thing from start to finish, and then overseeing the monitoring and controlling whatever changes that might arise, Well, project management also is very, very similar. It's just usually more a bigger umbrella, that accommodates even more than that. I hope I've been able to answer your question, Shreya. Okay, thank you. So let me check the chat room too. Okay, all topic of discussion is amazing and inspiring. Okay, I don't think that's for me.
Okay. Thank you. I think someone's hand is up. That's going to be the last question for this session. Okay. Please, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, thank you, Hafiz. Thank you for the session. I mean, it was enlightening, right? So my question is, so I'm a product manager. I'm a practicing product manager, and some of the roles that you listed now are quite related to what I do at some point. And then as a product manager, I get to also do some roles or some tasks as a project manager. Now, I was actually going to ask the first facilitator that taught on business analysis this question. So I just thought to ask. So as a product manager, at what point do I get to put maybe a stop gap being a product manager, a business analyst, and also a project manager? At what point do I get to differentiate that in my role? Because there are times that when I'm working, I get to also do the work of a business analyst and also a project manager. So how do I match that, and how do I differentiate that in my role as a product manager?
All right, thank you very much. I think on your I mean, I'm sorry, I'm murdering your name. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. So I don't think the issue is to be differentiating. I think I think what you should do is to find a way to even balance it, because at the end of the day, you need all of those skills to properly deliver. Correct? You need the business analysis skill in itself. You need your skills in your product management as well as project management. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to differentiate these skills. It just means that, you need to have more knowledge and probably more insight around some of the tools that you could use that will help you in delivering your set objective. Now, the idea.
I went on Wednesday. My Thursday was public holiday.
That for me, is somebody speaking? Is that purpose or probably person is? Okay. Now, so as I was saying, right, it's really important that you kind of have the skills. It's the point isn't really supposed to be the differentiation of those things, because I think at the end of the day, you need to have all of those skills all together as a person to be able to effectively deliver. Imagine now in the instance where you just say you have project management skills, and then of course you then realize that for you to deliver as a project manager, you still need business analysis skill. Does that now mean that you dump your project management skills and then focus on business analysis skills? No, right? So it's important that you have all the knowledge, you have all knowledge is abundant, right? You can't have all the knowledge, but at least have the right things to know, and then know how to use the tools that will be applicable in different instances. Now, as a business analyst also, and a product manager or project manager as it is, you really cannot overemphasize the importance of knowing how to use certain tools that will help you at the end of the day. Now, I believe that in your own capacity, in your own organization, there are so many tools that you also use, that will help you either putting proper plans in place, or probably something that will help you, estimate something, or something that will probably show a graphical representation of what you are thinking in your mind, or something that will have like a proper mind mapping, so many things that you need to put into consideration. So I don't think it's about separating those tools, those skills. I really think it's more about bringing them more together, and even other skills that you even have in other areas can really help you at the end of the day, because bottom line for your employer is for you to deliver. And I think that's the most important thing. Thank you very much. I hope I've been able to respond to your question.
Yeah, you have. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much, Hafiz. Please, a resounding applause in the chat room to our second trainer for today.
Thank you very
Please,
much.
let's applaud him. Thank you, Hafiz. I really enjoyed your session. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, thank you so much for standing by till now. All right, so excuse me for that. Right about now, we'll be going on a very, very short break. And when we are back, we will be entering the third session, where we'll be handling the Personal Excellence Program. And the topic there is personal goal and vision setting. Okay, so please do not go too far. We will be back, or we are starting at exactly 12 p.m. So your break is a very short one, so don't go too far. Thank you so much, and enjoy your short break.